Nicolas Ferreira, welcome to Challenge to Champion podcast. You were referred to me by a mutual friend. I think she's a mutual friend of yours.
Indeed.
She's also a tenant here at Big X. And she told me that you have a story that will really line up with the main idea behind the podcast, the Challenge to Champion.
Yeah.
And we'll delve into that a bit. I'm not that knowledgeable on this topic, but I think you're gonna give me the insight.
Perfect. Ready.
So give us a bit of the backstory. Who's Nicolas?
Okay, so Nick. To start, I'm a personal trainer. Didn't start off that way. I think I've always been passionate about fitness and sport and that industry or that environment. But I think everyone out of high school always thinks, no, I'm going to go study medicine. I'm going to go study something that's going to make me lots of money. But I think for me, it was the complete opposite. I think I started out, medicine, but every time an opportunity came up or every time I tried, it's sort of like everything came short. And I could feel like, this isn't the industry that I need to go into. Long story short, started off at Tux with a BSc Animal Science, not Animal Science, Sciences to eventually apply for medicine.
As like a breaching
Yes, like
phase.
a bridging course essentially, but actual degree.
Yeah.
I saw my bum when failed almost every subject. And that's when I started having a conversation with the parents where we were like, flip it, where do we go from here? We were then advised, listen, go study B.Ed. So B.Ed is education, teaching. Go do a B.Ed specializing in human movement science and sports management. So I thought, okay, it's sport, it's education, it's something that I enjoy, working with people. Then she said after a year or two, you can apply for physiotherapy or something that you feel like you want to go into in terms of sport and medicine and that route. So then got there. And then a year or two went by and I actually loved it more than I felt like I needed to apply for something else. I felt like God was telling me, you know what, you've decided to this, you've stuck through with it, bring it to fruition, finish it off. Finished it, loved every second of it. While studying, I was doing my personal training diploma, certificate, whatever you want to call it. And I started helping people out. And that's when I started figuring out, like, yes, I actually love working with people. I actually love helping people. I love helping people improve, reach their health goals, fitness goals. And then one thing led to another, ended up in a teaching position. Yes, absolutely hated it. I felt like I'm not going to name anyone or any schools at that stage, but the school I was at, yes, just a horrible experience. Like for me, it literally put me off completely from teaching in the environment, and that then I left there, or I felt in that space while I was teaching there, and that was 2019. So I graduated 2017, 2018, worked a little bit in a small private boutique gym working with EMS, so body tech. Then I worked with this Australian company doing some filming for them with a gym that they wanted to start in Australia. Finished that year off, and then that's when... So I met my wife also just after I graduated, started dating 2018. Obviously, we then worked that year, body tech, the Australian, the Australian gig. End of 2018, I decided, listen, proposed. She said yes. Then 2019, then I thought, no, listen, I need to start earning something so that I could at least eventually pay rent and we can move into our own space. Yeah, I can provide. Then got married at beginning of 2019, and now this is where I started working for that school, and it just feels like, yes, I just started working, or I just got married. I cannot not work or bring something in, because then that puts a hell of a lot of pressure on our marriage, on the situation and the season we're in. Horrible experience at school, and then that's when I started like questioning. Like my wife actually encouraged me. She said, "Listen, why don't you actually just do what you're passionate about? You've always spoken about it for years. Why don't you just take that leap of faith? And I'm pretty sure God will catch you, and I'm sure God will lead your next step." And that's when I decided, okay, let me start personal training full time. Got involved with this small boutique gym called Fit First. Owner, loved her, awesome experience. I think I learned a hell of a lot of aspects in terms of the fitness industry, learning people, reading people, learning how to program, learning good social skills in a sense. And that's when it started kicking off and picking up, where I felt like, no, this is the industry I wanna be in. Then fast forward to 2022, Sky gave birth to our first child, Nathan, and then things changed a bit, where just what I was earning, because the small boutique gym, I was earning a set salary instead of earning per client or per session, which was in a sense not limiting, but it was capping in terms of your growth. So I then made the decision, we prayed about it, and we felt like, no, I think it's time to branch off and start doing my own thing, start building my own brand, start building my own business. And then I got involved as a personal trainer at Planet Fitness Olympus, and then been there since. And it's been a journey. It's been insane. It's been tested, tried and tested, and yet here we are today, trying to build a business, trying to build a brand, and trying to help and motivate and encourage people along the way.
That's beautiful, man. Tell me, with the studies, you said you flunked on everything.
Yeah.
My studies went the same way.
Yeah.
Didn't go as planned at all. But when you changed to something that you are passionate about, was it a lot easier? Did you do a lot better? Or was it still a bit of a mission because the fact of the studying?
I think it was a harder work, in the sense of it was more freeing in the sense of, okay, flip, now I'm not doing something that I'm not passionate about. It was more, I think my perspective just changed from, I'm doing something that I could see myself doing in the future, and that I'm passionate about, that I'm enjoy doing. And I think that was the only thing. But I think in that, I think it's harder work because now there's more pressure because of, okay, I've just flunked a year, flip, there's pressure to now have to perform in a sense, because you don't want to upset your parents. You don't want to obviously place that extra financial burden on them since you've just flunked a year. So,
and you're now doing what you say you're passionate about, so now you should perform.
Yeah.
No more excuses for this.
Exactly. So, and Scar, sorry, that's my last name. Like we always have this conversation where it's great, you're doing what you're doing, you're passionate, but you still got to graft. Like, you still got to put in the work, you still got to put in the hours.
Yeah, and you still have to do the admin, and you still have to do a lot of things that you're not passionate about.
Yeah.
But it comes as a package.
Exactly. I think, I know people always say, like, if in a marriage or with kids or in your work, you have with life in general, you have your good days and your bad days. Same with doing what you're passionate about. Yes, you've got your good days, those bad days, you feel like, flip it, like, I don't feel like I'm progressing here. But like you said, I think if you do those bad days, go through those bad days, do what you're not passionate about, I think it leads to more, I think for me, more freedom, more joy at the end of the day, because you combining the two, which is leading to a whole package. In a sense.
I agree with that totally. We have a house flipping business, and everyone thinks this is their dream job.
Yeah.
So we actually started a YouTube channel just to show people what it really entails. Yeah. It's a lot of shit that you have to deal with constantly.
Yeah.
Running a construction site is not like you see on Instagram, just picking cabinet colors, picking nice tiles. It's not that. It's dealing with problems every day, basically the whole day. And then maybe out of a 2 or 3 month project, you have 1 or 2 days where you do the nice things. Yeah. So that's just how it is. And every business is like that.
Yeah.
I think the easier you accept that, the faster you accept that, that's the easier it will be.
No, 100%. Like, I think what I've seen, especially in my industry, I think, because it is like you might maintain your client base. Like, you have a general number of clients that you maintain throughout the year. And your goal is always to gain new clients and to maintain that new number of clients throughout the year, because then it sort of brings some sort of stability, sustainability for you to work off of. But then you do get months where 2 or 3 clients leave you, and it's a few extra bucks that you could do with. And then you sit there and you're like, frick it. Then you've got to graft again. Then you've got to go back to marketing, edit, or doing what you need to do to get your name out there to pull clients in, and those are
create
like
content. And it's difficult things to do.
And that's the thing. It's always like a back and forth. It's a back and forth grind, which it's you still enjoy it, because then you end up doing what you love doing regardless.
Yeah, my wife's a biokineticist, and the problem with her career as well, if she does her job properly, then the client should leave in 2 months, because
exactly.
if they're not getting better, then you're not doing your job properly.
Yeah.
But if you do your job properly, your customer is going to leave.
Yeah.
So I think that's a difficult catch-22 on it.
No, 100%. I think I think there are many people in the industry that actually know what they're talking about, but I feel like there's so many people that give bad advice, and I think that harms people more than anything. Like, especially what you're saying with your wife and the being a biokineticist. I think it's exactly that. Like, and as a trainer, personal trainer, or coach even, your job is, when you have a client, is to set them up for when they go and train on their own for success.
Yeah.
And if they still end up, let's say they're with you for 3 months, 6 months, and they end up going off on their own journey, which is the reality of the work you do. And I have nothing against it. I think I'm all for that. They shouldn't feel the need to have to come back, because then you haven't done your job properly within those months that you worked with them, or within that year that you worked with them, depending on how long that client is with you. But you've got to set that person up for success, because it is like, there's so much bad advice out there that
bro science, a lot of it.
Yes, a lot of it.
Every guy who's lifted a weight wants to give some advice.
Exactly, like some guy, and I blame and shame bodybuilders, but that's just the industry that I can think of as a good example. Like, someone who's now all of a sudden trained for a year and knows exactly what he's talking about. Yeah. True, but not always. Like, not the full grind behind it. And I think that's what...
all the science behind it.
Exactly. I think it's one thing to train and to know your body and how your body reacts, and you know what to do. But it's different knowing how to apply that to a client that's got, for example, Achilles surgery, for example. Like, what do you do then with a squat? Because that person will definitely not be able to squat the same as someone that can squat freely.
Yeah, and the recovering aspect of that. It's something that people don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And I've seen also, I've been training since I was about 16. I worked at Virgin Active after school. I was there for a couple of years, like in my gap year. So I'm very into fitness as well.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, I'm very aware of my body. If you try and teach someone to bench press, don't use your shoulder, try and use your chest. Yeah. And those types of things, people don't know that.
Yeah.
And even if you are trying to coach someone while doing it, they don't know how to activate certain muscles, how to keep the right posture, a lot of those things. And I think with that, having someone knowledgeable is so beneficial.
Yeah.
And it can fast track your whole fitness journey or recovery journey.
Yeah. It is. Like, if you look at, I mean, if you had to ask a client why that first aspect of why they wanted to actually train with someone or get someone to help them, is because sometimes the biggest thing they do is they walk into a gym, either they're intimidated by what's going on around them, they don't have that experience and knowledge of what to do, how am I going to do it, and I think that scares them off a lot more, and you'll find a lot of people are like that. They lack that motivation because they don't know the basics of how does the bench press machine work, or how does a bench
or
press...
intimidation. They're intimidated by everything, or the people that know how to do it, so you're going to look like the old one out.
Yeah.
But the fact is, a lot of people don't know, so you can just do whatever, you'll fit right in.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, and you hope they choose you. I mean, as being a trainer, there's always that hope that you want people to come to you. But at the end of the day, I'm all for, like, people, as long as they're training safely with good form technique, they know what they're doing, they're setting their bodies and themselves up for success. I'm all for it. Whether it's with a trainer or on their own, go for it.
What do you think about, I don't want to get you into trouble, but what do you think about trainers that aren't in shape, but that's what they're selling? They're selling you a good lifestyle and a good physique, but they themselves haven't mastered it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think...
Do you think they can still be a good trainer, although they're not following their own advice?
100%. I think you can still be a good trainer, regardless of what you look like. But if you look at a trainer, like, your first selling point is what you look like, because that's the first impression. Is before they even come and approach you wanting to chat about how they want to reach their health and fitness goals, they look at you and be like, listen, he's well built, or she's looking good, or she's in shape, he's in shape, he's well built. They look at that And then they're like, okay, because he looks good, I'm going to go to him because he obviously knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, it's like, I don't agree with the sense of, I feel like as a trainer, you've got to look after yourself. You've got to, because that's the image you're portraying. That's what you're selling. You're selling you. Yeah. That's personal training. That's coaching, personal coaching. You're selling what you look like. You're selling, because that's that first initial step, whether you've said or done anything. That's what's going to motivate people to want to come to you, because they can see, Flip, this guy works hard. Flip, this guy is looking good. He obviously knows what he's talking about. I'm going to go to him to see if he can help me. So I think 100% on the one side, I think you can still be a good trainer regardless of what you look like. But if you want to do well, I think you've got to look after yourself and sell yourself in a way that it's going to pull people in to actually wanting to train with you.
It might be a little bit judgy, but
no, 100%.
The same with like financial advisors.
Yeah.
Seeing a financial advisor that maybe doesn't look like he has money.
Yeah.
And that might be the car or whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact is, there might be other reasons why he doesn't drive a nice car. And that's also fine. Yeah. But it's more difficult to sell someone when you don't have the fruit yourself.
Yeah. No, and I think it's with anything, especially if you're in the like customer relations industry. And I think there's a lot of businesses like that, where you deal with people. And I think if you don't set that first impression well, or a good first impression, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot at the end of the day.
Your selling is gonna need to be a lot better.
You've got to, and that's the thing. I think, like, because already, I'm gonna say this, like, as a trainer, like, your work is already hard. I mean, the hours you work, the amount of, because even if you're like super flat on a day, you've still got to be super energized for that client, because for that client, they don't know how many clients you've seen previously before them. So that could be, you've got to see it as that's the first client for the day. So if you're not putting that first impression, I think, again, you are going to shoot yourself in the foot, because you want to make your role, your job as easy as possible, streamlined as possible. You don't want to have to, for example, if you're not looking after yourself and you're a trainer, I think you're putting more pressure on yourself to have to perform in other areas.
Of course.
And so your capacity eventually like gets called into question. Are you able to maintain that capacity?
Yeah.
And I think, just those small little things that you just do to help yourself in the industry.
Yeah, of course. I think also, with that being said, like my situation, I could do things previously and I have the knowledge. I can show someone how to train legs, although I can't train legs.
Yeah.
So the knowledge about things are still, it's still able to push you through.
Yeah.
Having the knowledge, but then you should have a good reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a hindrance. Let's call it a hindrance. Yeah. You're a diabetic.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you explain to me what being a diabetic is?
So being a diabetic, so basically, if you have diabetes, so there's two types. So you get type 1, type 2. So type 1 is, type 1 is the more severe one. So type 1 is where you're insulin dependent, meaning you can't live your life, or you can't do things, eat things without putting insulin in your body. Type 2 science, and I mean, if you research it, type 2 is very like your lifestyle. So for example, type 1 is generally genetic, but in my case, it's so weird how I've been diagnosed with it, because no one in my family, extended family, has diabetes. So for me, it's like the first time that our family has had to experience that and go through that. And so we had a lot of questions about, like, flip it, how did this happen? Why? Like, and so getting to the point of now what diabetes is, I just had to figure out that, or I had to accept that having type 1, it's where your pancreas, it's like your body has rejected your pancreas in a sense. You still have your pancreas, it's still in your body, but it's just the workings of it your body has rejected. So
your pancreas releases insulin.
Yes.
And that insulin helps you to convert sugar into energy.
Yeah.
That's the basics of it, right?
The basics of it, the gist of it. So I know with regards to having that, knowledge around training. So if you eat a carbohydrate, for example, let's say you eat a banana, your liver is obviously going to release, your pancreas will help release that insulin to counter the breaking downs of that carbohydrate, so that it's not just absorbed as sugar. So you counter that sugar spike from eating that banana. So that's the basic gist of it.
What will usually happen is when you do that, will you have a massive energy drop, or what would be the effects of that?
So it depends, and that's what I've had to learn. Like, and it depends. So for example, if I'm just eating the banana, I'm not training, or I'm not doing something active, or I'm not going somewhere, I'll just inject what I need to. So for example, with having type 1, I'm luckily on the insulin pump. So using the insulin pump, there's a system called carb counting. So for example, for every carb that you eat, there's a ratio. Your specialist that works out, knowing your body, getting to know your body, your specialist works out a ratio for you that for every gram of carbohydrate you eat, your body needs X amount of insulin. So I know for me, if I eat a banana, that's plus minus 13 to 15 grams of carbs, 10 to 15 grams of carbs. So I know that I need between 1.5 to 2 units, 1.2 to 2 units of insulin for that banana. So maybe even more. But that's just if I'm not doing anything active. So if I had to, for example, eat a banana before I train, I'd have to counter that. So I would have to make sure that I don't get too much insulin. So for example, I'll then put the grams of carbohydrates in my pump. The pump will tell me, okay, you need X amount of insulin. I will adjust that, because if I take too much insulin and I'm training, I'll definitely hit a drop during the session, towards the end of the session, or even afterwards, which could then be harmful in the sense, or dangerous in the sense, where sometimes I can feel while I'm going into a low, other times I can't. And if you get to that point where it's too late for you to, out of your own, to want to do something, it can get quite dangerous and can get quite tough. And I've been in many situations like that. But
so
again,
then, are you off to hospital, or are you in bed, or what happens?
Not necessarily. I think it just depends on how low your sugar is. I mean, there have been times where I've had sugars after a training session, where it's been like 2.2, sometimes even 1.8, and that's like super low. So
do you measure it yourself?
Yeah, so I do finger pricks. I am moving towards the smart glucose monitoring device, which is the one that you...
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, just to also check how your body reacts. And the funny thing is, me and my wife did it simultaneously, and my graph and her graph looks totally different, although we try and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And even at the same time, like if she ate something after 7 at night, she would have crazy drops during the night.
Yeah.
And it would wake her up.
Yeah.
So that allows you to like see how you react. And
exactly.
I don't have to wear one, because I got the info out of it.
Yeah. So, and then at the end of the day, it depends on what your blood sugar is. So depending on where your blood sugar is, obviously if your blood sugar is high, I would, if my sugar is above 12 and I go train, I'll first wait for that sugar to come down a bit. Then I'll go train, just in terms of a health aspect. Because the higher your sugar is and you go train, the more pressure you put your body under, which you want to avoid. You don't want your body to go through so much stress and pressure when it already does that every day. So yeah, it all depends on, there's so many factors to consider, but I've learned to try and like being with it I was diagnosed when I was 6. So being with it this year will be 24 years. You learn sort of like the trick of the trade. You learn what works for you, what works for your body, what works with what you're eating, when you're eating it, what your sugar is.
And counting everything.
You've got to and it sounds bad, you have to count everything. But again, being with it for so long, I know that if I have a bowl of rice or pasta or something that's high in carbohydrates, I know that a bowl of rice or a bowl of pasta, I know how many carbohydrates are in that bowl already. So I know then, okay, if I'm eating X amount of rice, I know that's more or less whatever I know how much units of insulin I need to inject for that. So it makes it easier, because then sometimes you guess a little bit. It's like but you know more or less. I know for a fact, if you have 2 slices of bread, that's 25 to 30 grams of carbs, I know for a fact that I need to inject between 2.5 and 3 units of insulin for 2 slices of bread, for example. So that I don't have to be smart about that. It like comes second. It's like, okay, X, Y, Z, let's go. Type thing.
It's in your routine.
It's
already.
in the routine, yeah. But you still get your good days and your bad days.
Of course, and you gauge it wrong.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did this impact your early years, your young years at school? Did it impact your sport? Did it impact socially?
I think in primary school, to be honest, I can't actually remember a lot of primary school days. But I do remember it was super tough for me because being 6 years old, like, you're so innocent at that age where you don't actually know well why. If you want a packet of sweets, for example, a packet of jelly babies, and your mom has to tell you, you know what, Nick, you can't. It's like, I feel like for me, I struggled with like trying to get to that point of realizing why I can't. I think obviously, and the older you get, the more mature you get, the more responsible you get, the better it becomes. But I think the childhood, it was super tough. And I think it was tough for my parents to have to adjust because they now had to wake up regularly during the night to make sure that my sugars weren't dropping, my sugars weren't spiking, checking my sugars. And I think as a family, it was a massive adjustment, like having to completely repack food cupboards. I mean, that's a silly example, but having to repack because me being me, I'm just going to go and eat whatever I want in a sense.
You're a small boy.
Exactly. Then primary school was a lot better. In terms of sports and stuff, I think it didn't affect my sports as much. I think it just added a lot more admin in the sense of I just had to make sure that I was finger pricking a lot to make sure to check where my blood sugars were during the event or during the afternoon sport training session.
So will it be like a couple of times an hour or something?
Yeah, so on average, you test finger prick. They say on average, but you look to finger prick at least 6 to 7 times a day. But obviously, life happens and you start like limiting that number. But especially in the beginning, we had to do that because we were trying to figure everything out. We got advice from the specialist, and we as a family were just trying to figure out how we're going to do it, what we're going to do, what works best. If my sugar drops, what do I eat? What works well with getting the sugar up in a more rapid way? Because if your sugar's low and you spike it, it can drop again. So
it will drop down lower than it was.
Exactly. So you've got to there's a way that you've got to level it, and I think figuring that out was tough. But I feel like I still was able to carry on with life without it being too much of a burden in a sense where, and I'm so grateful for my parents because they allowed me to still do what I wanted to do and what I was good at. And I feel like they filled that gap for me in the sense of making sure that I had what I needed to still do what I did. Until I got to high school, then obviously we worked on like me taking more responsibility for things. And then, yes, I think high school took a downward spiral. I think high school, if I had to look at my diabetic journey, I think that was probably my worst years, toughest years.
Why is that? Did you feel like an outsider? Did you feel different, or was it just a big hassle?
I think for me, obviously, when you're a high school student, you law scope, you don't take full responsibility for things. You want to be your own person. You want to be hard and difficult. You go through that whole phase of being a rebel in a sense. Like my parents telling me, I'm not going to listen to my parents. What do they know? Like being a harde gat, if I can say it that way. And I just didn't take responsibility for things. And yes, they've been like through high school bad, like low sugar drops where I'll faint at school. I mean, there was a time where I wouldn't even test half the time. So it was a very tough testing time in high school because I feel like it didn't click with me that I had to take full responsibility for this, not knowing what the negative effects would be long term. And I think that for me, that was the toughest time as high school, was just trying to learn. Or I felt like it was such a burden, like diabetes, like frick. Not in a sense I was angry at God, but I was just like questioning, like, frick, why am I the only one that's like struggling? I feel like I'm the only one that's struggling with this. I feel like I'm not figuring this out. I feel like I don't want to do this. I don't want to accept this. Like, and so then you just head up in a downward spiral, and you end up. I mean, I remember there was one night it was matric after party. our year 2012. So I matriculated 2012. So there was a year where matric after party, nothing happened. Like, was able to, I knew by then that I knew which alcohol would spark my sugars and what I was able to handle that wouldn't affect my sugars as much. So, but again, at that stage, and I'll be honest, like, I didn't care. Like, I wanted to enjoy life. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like other kids. I feel like comparison during high school was a big thing for me. Like, cause I feel like I can't do things a certain way, but other people can. But why can't I just be like them? Why can't I do what they do? Why can't I just, be like other people? And that was a bad headspace to be in. And so, again, like that matric after party, handled myself well, wasn't completely tipsy or drunk, didn't get drunk or tipsy or anything like that. But I did consume alcohol. Got home that night, was still able to talk to my mom, and I had a mate stay with me that night as well at our place. And during the middle of the night, my mom actually tells me the story. She felt like the spirit or something telling her, like, listen, just go check on Nick. Just go check what's happening. Like, she felt uneasy. So she got up, went to go check, and this was like early hours of the morning. I mean, if you ever go to a matric after party and get home before 12, you didn't do it right, in a sense. So my mom went to go check, and there I am in the bed, like having a fit, a frothing from the mouth. And so then my mom and dad go into like, not panic mode, but they go into like, shit, we need to sort this out like now. And so the best thing for a diabetic, if you're ever in a state or situation like that, the best thing to do is to take honey or sugar or any hot thing high in glucose, and to rub it on the gums of the teeth or on the divanga, the inside of your cheek. And so there's my mom doing it, and I was like wet, full of sweat. And they trying to get me out of the sugar. And my mom said this, I think this went on for like a few hours. They couldn't get it up. Eventually they phoned the doctor. The doctor comes through. He gives me a one of those
adrenaline shots.
One of those adrenaline shots just to like get me out of it. Eventually I came to, and everyone was around me. It was just a bad experience. Because in that state, like, I don't remember nothing. Whenever I have a low, and my wife will tell you, there have been times where I've had a low with her, and I don't remember anything. Like, I don't remember how I got there, what happened, what my parents were doing in the moment, or whoever was helping me, what they did in the moment. And I felt so bad for my mate because he just stood there at the door, and I could see the look on his face, like this look of like, holy moly, like, what is actually happening? There was like this proper look, like white look, that yes, someone's just taken this oak's like soul from his body.
Someone that saw trauma.
Yeah. And I think, yes, from then that's when I realized, like, flip it, things need to be a bit better. So towards the end of high school, things did get a bit better. I think my parents also just got a lot more stringent with me, and then went to varsity. And I think from then I somehow responsibility just kicked in gear, and I was able to like handle it and be more responsible about it. But it was tough. Growing up was quite a tough thing.
I think it is very difficult. Like you said, you'll go through phases, but not to get resentful against life for the difficulties that you're going through. It's a difficult thing, and a lot of people going through those things, they will tell you, no, it's good. Or if you look at my content even, it always looks great. But you do go through those ups and downs because it is difficult. You don't have things as easy. I have difficulties like with my bladder, with my bowel, everything. People think I can not walk. That's the only problem. But there's a lot of other things that are implicated by this.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating having to do the math, having to time everything, calculate everything. It's so frustrating and draining. And I think you do I get resentful.
Yeah.
But the more important part is snapping out of it fast.
Yeah.
Not lingering. Feeling those feelings, that's fine, but not lingering on them.
No, it is like if you linger too much, yes, your mind takes you. Your mind throws you on a curveball, and it feels like your mind is making it worse and worse and worse and worse. But I think I've just learned at the moment when I get into a space, because there have been many moments where I feel like you feel like sorry for yourself in a sense, and that's when you start getting resentful and resent like people and things. When flip it, all you have to do is just look at what's happened or what is happening, and just sort of take a step back and be like, you know what, God, okay, I accept this. This is obviously what you wanted for my life. And I know sickness and illness and stuff is not from God. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying God uses that for his plan for your life to bring glory to his name at the end of the day, to sum it up.
And a lot of the time it gives the potential for something great.
Yeah.
Where everyone loves the hero's journey. You don't want to just see a movie where everything goes great from start to finish. No one likes that. They want to see the hero's journey. They want to see the fall and the rise afterwards. Yeah. That's what inspires. I think it is very insightful to go through difficult things. And I think in a lot of ways, it's an advantage. Yeah. Going through diversity. And it's difficult to see it a lot of the time. A lot of people ask the wrong question, and I do as well. But they ask, why me? And I think the better question to ask, which is more relevant, is why not you? Yeah. Why do you think you shouldn't have this and maybe someone else should have it? Yeah. And that's also not fair. Yeah. So the fact is, some people are going to go through difficulties. It might as well be me because I'm strong enough. Yeah. And I'm going to exit stronger. Yeah. And I think that is a better mind shift. It's a difficult mind shift to make.
No, 100%. Like, I think even like during varsity, and this only came to this realization like a year or two ago, where I felt like I was always, walking a journey with God, grew up in the church, not religious, but like grew up in the church. And I feel like my parents guided us well in that space. But you always hear of stories where people get healed, like these miraculous healings, and you're like, flip, I want that. Like, if God can do it for her, for him, for them, why can't he do it for you? And I feel like for long I kept chasing that healing, and I sort of got too obsessed with that until a few years back I came to this realization, like this, call it an epiphany if you want, but I got this massive revelation where I was so focused and so obsessed with wanting to get healed, instead of taking a step back and changing my perspective and looking at the situation through God's eyes, and instead of viewing it as like a bad thing in my life, I had to change my perspective and see it as like a positive thing that God wants to use to actually showcase like what he can do for your life while still being diabetic and not being limited. And I only came to that realization a few years back. So, it took 21 years to get there. But
it's never too late.
Yeah.
It's always the best time to have that type of realization.
Exactly. So, and with that comes a lot more freedom, in the sense of, flip, if you have a good day or a bad day, you sort of approach it better in the sense of, oh, it's okay, it happens. Next day is going to be better. You just need to do this better. Just need to control that better. Just need to. So there's a lot more freedom that came with that. But still, there are things that happen almost every day or every week, every year, that throws you completely off.
And it's difficult to create that mental strength while being in a difficult time. Yeah. I heard something where a guy said, if it is in fact possible that a person is able to feel bad although everything's going good, the opposite must also be possible. Yeah. So it must be possible for them to feel good while it's going bad, because you're totally in control of what you feel. You can also lose it, but you can rein it back. Yeah. And that is your experience, and that is what you need to manage, because you're the only one experiencing it. Yeah. So you're the only one that's going to benefit out of making this mind shift.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like, and that's the thing, that you think with diabetes, sport and my fitness journey is going to come to a halt, and even like back to your previous question, like where asking, did it ever like hinder in terms of sport, or was it what I was able to do, what was I not able to do? I think luckily I didn't view it in the sense of limiting me, where I I didn't have the perspective that I have now, but I approached in a sense of, well, I'm still going to do what I can do, what I'm able to do, up until obviously my diabetes kicks in or something happens where I then need to take a step back and sort of like go change how I go about it. But yeah, going through high school, varsity never limited me in the sense of doing what I wanted to do sport-wise and fitness-wise. Was still able to train, was still able to do varsity rugby, was still able to do a lot of things. And yes, have the perspective of viewing it as a bad thing, but now having that perspective, it's like, okay, now I know why I was able to do why I was able to do what I did, and what I still am able to do is because God is using it for a bigger picture, for a bigger reason, other than how I view it.
Yeah, and I can think the inspiration for especially some of your clients, knowing that you're going through this deeper struggle than them, and still being able to get the results and showing them it's possible daily, and getting up early and working hard, even though you have to check all these things and measure everything and think about everything, which people just take for granted. It's just, you can just eat whatever you want.
No, man, it's been, because like you said, life keeps throwing you a curveball. Like, I mean, being in this industry, and knowing people, getting to know people, and I feel like there's so much hatred in this world, and I've seen like people don't want to give people the vuma or the encouragement when someone's doing well in life. In a sense, I feel like people are so quick to break someone else's journey down if they're succeeding just because they're not succeeding or they're going through a hard time. And I feel like, yes, 100%, each to their own season, each to their own ways. But being in this industry, like what really started affecting me was training. I feel like, to me, and I hate it. I hate like being arrogant. I hate like blowing smoke up my own bum. I hate boasting. That's like my life has always been like, I never boast, never ever, because what are you going to achieve? Like, what are you trying to achieve in wanting to boast or build up your own name? And what really started affecting me was that I would just go about it, and to me, I feel like I look pretty good, pretty decent for what I do and what I'm able to do, and I feel so many people are so quick to break you down, like, oh, you're on insulin must help, insulin that must be
it's
a
probably
steroid,
at advantage.
And I'm like, you might think so, just because I mean I know the science behind it, I know the backstory behind it, and it's sort of like, it hurts me when I hear people say that, because it's like people diminish the actual work that it still takes to get to that point.
People like to see other people doing well, but not better than them.
Yeah.
That's just how it is, unfortunately. I've heard of another guy in a wheelchair that I spoke to. He's a CrossFit guy in a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah.
And he told me he was training at his gym, and he has really muscular arms due to the fact that it's his legs as well.
Yeah.
And another guy came to him and told him, yes, you're so lucky, man. You get to train arms every day. He's like, okay, that's one way of thinking about it. You can train arms every day as well, if that's what you wanted. But I can't train legs.
Yeah.
But that's just people being a bit ignorant, and it happens.
Yeah. No, it is. Like, now, I make a joke about it. Like, my character, my personality is just, I try and make a joke about everything. There's a time to be serious, but I try bring in some humor, bring in some joy into a situation.
You can tell people that's a testosterone pump that you have.
No, 100%. I've got a continuous steroid drip on me. So there is like ways that you can joke about it, but I feel like you've got to numb yourself to the opinions of this world a lot of the time.
Critics. It will always happen. Hurt people. They're probably going through some stuff as well.
Yeah.
Tell me about epigenetics. Do you know epigenetics?
Not 100%.
So I might screw this up as well, but the way I understand epigenetics is you have genetics, and these are things that you can't change. Being lactose intolerant, being diabetic, all of these things that you might have. Yeah. Now, epigenetics is a way of managing your genetics. Say your genetics would rather allow you to be a fat person
Yeah.
than a in shape person.
Yeah.
But if you understand your genetics and you can tweak your lifestyle, epigenetics is lifestyle based.
Yeah.
So it's eating correctly, doing the right things, and that can manage your genetics. Whatever genetic problem you have, a lot of the things can be managed by epigenetics. A lot of them can't.
Yeah.
But I assume you are very strict with what you eat, what you drink, what you do daily.
Yeah.
And that is a way of managing it. And I think without knowing, you are changing your epigenetics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to sum it up, I think most definitely, because you've got to do, because it is. I can't look at it and be like, okay, well, I'm not diabetic, so I'm just gonna continue as is. Like, you've got to change your situation, got to change your lifestyle, got to change your diet in a way that sort of allows your diabetes to actually flourish, rather than it just being a burden.
Yeah.
So it is like unintentionally now, like I do things in a way where previously maybe to form it a habit, but now I feel like I'm just changing things or doing things that I feel like, my epigenetics are just now the way they are because of what I had to instill to get to this point, and to, again, like I said, make my diabetes flourish in a way.
I think if someone wants to know what you're going through, and it's maybe lightening it a bit, but they can probably do a strict diet. I did carnivore January, and that forces you to look at everything you eat, say no to almost everything, and knowing how limiting that is. You can't just pop into the Woolworths and get something, because the options are so few. And I think that can just give people a little hint of your everyday. And maybe that will give them a bit of empathy with understanding your condition.
No, 100%. Like, I think if we look at diabetes, like there's I mean, even in the training world, like there's a thing called of insulin sensitivity. So that is even more highly important for a diabetic, because the higher your insulin sensitivity, the higher your body is likely to reject the insulin that you're taking in. And so that's one aspect of your genes that you've got to like improve at, to lower your insulin sensitivity, so that, for example, what you eat, that your insulin is going to work and it's going to counter that 100%. And those are the sort of things that I've needed and started to look at, because I mean, you don't want to live a life where it's like you always got to constantly check over your shoulder, check on your plate what you're watching, what you're eating, what you're doing, what. You want to sort of instill things in place that you're changing, that sort of forms a habit that you don't even second guess it anymore, or have to think about it twice. So that's just one area where that you have to change. And it's tough, like the higher carbohydrate source that you eat and you don't inject for it, or the little that you inject for it, that's where that plays with your insulin sensitivity. And that's where you've got to start like watching, because the more you leave your sugar uncontrolled, the worse your insulin sensitivity is going to be, and your body's going to end up reaching a point where it's going to actually reject the insulin that you need. And that's not a space that you want to be in. I haven't heard of anyone that's gotten to that point. I've just heard and seen of the dangers that can come if you don't change that in the aspect of when it comes to diabetes.
Tell me, like, in my situation, there's a lot of things that keep me going, that a lot of things in technology that I know it's currently being developed, that gives me hope for the future. That tells me, listen, it might not be like this forever. And the problem with this is it normally goes quite slow, the development of these technologies and things that can improve your situation. For me, I look at Elon Musk's Neuralink. And to me, and what is out in the open currently, that looks like the best piece of hope that I can cling on to, because they are working physically on my situation, on fixing paralyzed people. Is there something with your diabetes that is going to be, that might be fixed by technology?
I think, yes, this is also such a topic, man. I think there's been talks about they working on it. And the funniest thing is, and there's so much controversy around it, is because the moment a medical company comes out with the fact that there's a cure for diabetes, the amount of, and I'm being real, the amount of money that company would, or pharmaceutical companies would lose is massive. Because if you go look at how many diabetes there are in the world, I feel like there's quite a few million, in my opinion. You need insulin, you need test strips, you need glucose monitoring devices, there's a whole lot of medical stuff that you need. The moment there's a cure, then all that income that they get from that is gone. So going back, I think there is research that and I've heard this for years, and it's so strange to me that it's been more than 10 years that there's been spoken word that no, they're working on it, there's proven tests that have worked, but there hasn't been like there's a cure, it's coming out, or we're looking in the next 10, 20 years, whatever the case may be. And I feel like medical companies and pharmaceutical companies don't actually speak out a lot about this. Like if you go and Google stuff, it's very like, I want to say, like the articles that you get, it's very like bland, it's very simple, in a sense.
Not descriptive.
Yes, exactly.
Grow the area.
Exactly. There's no in-depth like spoken word about it, if I can say it that way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't done enough research. So if I am, I apologize. But I feel like there's so much unspoken word about it that it sort of leaves people like not hopeless, but that you sit with a lot of frustration. But again, in my opinion, I'm like, whether there's a cure, great, there's a cure, but I'm viewing it as like God that's using it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't know when it will come, but I'm hopeful that it will come.
No,
that
100%.
I can do what I used to do, and just have more options.
Yeah.
And the same is in my field. I mean, the amount of devices and wheelchairs and things that are being sold to disabled people.
Yeah.
If you take that market away, it's a massive money machine.
100%.
And that causes them to stop this development.
Yeah.
But they can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
And especially if there's strong enough push behind it, and there's also a monetary incentive for the other option.
Yeah.
Neuralink it's growing tremendously fast.
Yeah.
They are looking at cures for blindness, cures for deafness, cures for Alzheimer's. I mean, and there's a lot of people that's going to give pushback to that.
Yeah.
But I think if there's enough push from the other side, it can win.
Yeah.
And if you talk about the morality behind it, they can't keep denying it.
No,
if there's
100%.
a cure, it will change so many people's lives.
Yeah.
So let's push for that.
No,
And with Elon Musk behind it, I think he's putting it in the public eye.
Yeah. And I think there's not enough people like that doing it. And so that's why, I mean, if you look at everything that Elon Musk has done, like everything that he said he's going to do, he's actually done.
It's taken a bit more time. Every time
100%,
he's very optimistic on everything.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it takes a bit longer, but he gets it done.
Yeah. And I think there's too much of guys promising one thing and not acting out on that promise. And then you get, for example, guys like Elon Musk, where I feel like if you go read all about everything that he started, I mean, SpaceX, the Tesla the car company that he started, like it's booming because he said he's going to do it. Yes, like you said, it's taken a bit of time, but he's actually stuck to what he said he'll do, and it's happening. So
yeah, and imagine the pushback on that.
Yeah, no.
Oil sellers, petroleum sellers, engine manufacturers. I assume the pushback was tremendous on that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if there's enough push from the other side, you can't halt it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, there's, yeah.
I also think that maybe them being able to do this is not the main thing that we need. We need someone that we know is trying to fix it.
Yeah.
And that gives enough hope. And the hope will be enough.
Yeah.
If you can convince yourself there is hope.
Yeah.
And that might be in your religion. That might be in your faith.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I have both. So if your faith is enough to keep you going, great. Cling on to that.
Yeah.
Whatever pulls you forward, whatever can motivate you. But for me, I'm practical. And with my faith, I get hindered a lot of the times by not knowing how it will happen, in which way, miraculously.
Yeah.
And that's difficult for me. But you can still have faith that God will use another human being to create the cure.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fairy, miracle.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Him being able to create this technology is a miracle in itself. And if you wake up a doctor that died 10 years ago and you tell him about this, he'll say, no way.
Yeah.
They told me 3 years ago in the hospital, there's no way. There's no chance of you walking again because I have a severed spine. It's not a incomplete break. It's a complete break.
Yeah.
So medically, there's no way. But they're missing a couple of pieces to this puzzle.
Yeah.
They're just looking at one way.
Yeah.
And that's not the only way.
Yeah.
So I think the hope aspect is instrumental in my attitude.
No, 100%. I think for both of us, I think the example that we can set for people, it's if we are approaching it with a good attitude, with knowing that there's hope down the line, I think imagine the amount of other people that are going to feed off that and put hope into their situations, whatever it may be. And I think, and I'm not saying I'm living for that praise of helping a person. For me, it's just, if I can help someone through a hard time, 100%, whatever it may be. So I think exactly that. I think if there's hope, it might put hope into someone else's situation that's looking to you, that's seeing that you're in a wheelchair, but yet you're still living life to the fullest. Like, we're not allowing things or situations or people to limit us to what we want to do and what we can do. So I think, and then that in turn, like, feeds someone else's situation or feeds into someone else's situation.
Yeah, also the fact that you are living your life, you are creating your memories. You don't want to live a dreary life. You don't want to live and have the memories of being cross, being mad at your situation, not living because of the situation.
Yeah.
You're going to sit with that memories. So you need to decide, listen, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Whatever the obstacle is.
Yeah.
Because that's the only choice you have.
Yeah.
Or you'll regret it.
Exactly.
Lying on your deathbed.
No, 100%. Like, I think, I mean, with you guys expecting your first child, it is your first one, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to get that wrong. And I mean, having 2 kids, it's exactly that. Like, what are you portraying to your kids that for them, are they going to sit there and be like, oh, dad's moping and groping again about him being in a wheelchair, about me, diabetes. But changing that and being like, flip it. We actually, yes, we living. It's our lives. But what are we doing that's setting up the next generation in a sense? Like, what example are we setting that's going to sort of feed hope into their situation? Like, yes, look at LaRue. Like, dad is rocking life. He's doing what he wants to do in the wheelchair. He's not letting the wheelchair stop him. How much motivation, encouragement is that kid going to have, or your kid going to have, knowing that he's seeing you live life to the fullest with that hindrance?
Yeah, I think having that opportunity to show your kids adversity can be overcome.
Yeah.
I've always heard that it's not taught, it's caught. So it doesn't impact as much what you tell them, actually. But they're just watching, they're observing you.
Yeah.
How do you act? How do you handle yourself?
Exactly.
And I think it's a really difficult thing. It's a difficult thing, and I'm very excited about that with getting a child. I'm excited of what it will bring out of me.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think a kid, shame I say this with the biggest love for my kids, but they 100% they test you, and they do bring out the worst in you, just because as humans you tend to be innately, like, we tend to be selfish. We tend to want to live for ourselves in a sense, but the Bible and God teaches us differently. And it's like you said, for me, I'm loving being able to show my kids that I can still do what I want to do and not be limited, and not let adversity challenge me and overcome me. But I can throw it around and be like, listen, yes, Dad's got this disease, but I'm not letting it win. And I think, like you said, it's an exciting time for you to work on your character, work on your fatherhood, work on. There's a lot of things that come out. Just like we spoke before we started, as marriage, there's this unspoken word that, oh, marriage is beautiful, you're gonna love it, and then you get there and then it's like, Bliksem, this is tough. And that's reality. Like, it's the same with this. I think with kids it's tough, but it's like it's so rewarding at the end of the day. And there's so many opportunities for, especially us being dads, there's so many opportunities. We're in a world, there's so many kids that are fatherless. Even with that father in the house, people are left so fatherless that, for me, I get motivated every day just to be better for my kids, and I hope that for you and your kid to come.
Yeah, that's I think that can be a strong pulling force, pulling you into the positive.
Yeah.
What would you want the guests to remember, or the viewers or listeners to remember? Or what thought would you like to leave them with?
I think for me, and you might not have a disease that I do, and you might not be in a wheelchair that like you are in, but I want guys to remember that I think you must embrace life, embrace your situation. And I'm not saying you don't have to accept it, because you don't have to always accept sickness and illness and stuff. I'm saying embrace it, meaning embrace your situation, seek challenge instead of running away from it, and look to become the embodiment of what it means to live out your strength. And for me, and just to put into perspective, like for me, I accept that I have diabetes. I challenge myself every day to not let it overcome me. Bad days, if I have negative thoughts about it, if I want to be like, yes, God, I'm grateful, like, why me? If I start getting to that space, I look to let that challenge me so I can change my perspective, change my outlook, change the way I deal with it. And then I go and I live life to the full. Yes, within parameters. Because at the end of the day, we've still got to do what you got to do. You still got to test. You still got to consume food. You still got to take insulin. Luckily, I've got the insulin pump to help. But I go out and I try and become the embodiment of what it means to live out my strength. And again, each person is going to have their own situation. So whatever is unique to the viewer's situation, whether they've got... I'm trying to think of examples here.
No, but the fact is, everyone has challenges. It might be their girlfriend leaving them.
Yeah.
And that challenge might feel as tough to them as your situation feels to you.
Exactly.
And I have empathy with that.
Yeah.
The most difficult thing you've been through is the most difficult thing you've been through. And that will still be difficult. But I think this motivates people, and maybe they themselves can see my situation isn't as bad as his, and he's still thriving. I can also thrive.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that our situations are worse than anyone else's. Exactly that. Like, doesn't matter what it is. At the end of the day, we're all equal under God's eye anyway. So I'm not saying that my situation is worse or better than anyone else's. I'm just saying I've made that decision to accept my situation and to still live out my strength, to still live out my life to the full. And I want to encourage viewers as well to do that. And as tough as it may seem, because sometimes people will say, oh, it's easier said than done. But I've been there. But
you're doing it.
I've been there. I'm doing it. I've had this disease for 24 years, and there never comes a time where I don't ever question why I'm doing what I'm doing. I know who I am. I know who God's made me to be, and I know the plans that he has for my life with diabetes, and I'm using that, and I'm living life to the full, and that's what I base my brand off as well. Like, I want to help clients, and I want to help people exactly that, like become their embodiment of what it means to live out their strength. And so that for me is essentially, if I could encourage someone through that or with that, then yeah, that puts a smile on my face every day.
That's beautiful, man. That's very inspirational, even to me, because I have a lot of challenges, but I don't have the same challenges that you have, and I can think how difficult that must be. But thank you so much for sharing your story, being open, and teaching me some things. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me. It's awesome. Like, it's awesome that you're creating platforms for people to share, and for people to like put hope into someone else's situation, in a sense. So thank you for having me. It's been awesome. It's been epic.
It's a big pleasure. Thanks a lot, man.
Awesome.